crazy. Trump's Justice Department has made it impossible for Luigi Mangione to have a fair trial, right? Or at least that's what his lawyers are arguing, and now a federal judge is demanding an explanation, right? Because back in April, U.S. District Judge Margaret Garnett explicitly warned DOJ officials to avoid speaking publicly about the case to make sure that there was a fair trial. But then especially in the wake of Charlie Kirk's killing, we've seen the Trump administration testing that order, right? Pointing to Mangione allegedly killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson as just one example of radical left violence threatening America. Except they've had a tendency to forget about that word allegedly. Right, last week, Trump said on Fox News that Mangione
shot someone in the back. As clear as you're looking at me, he looked like a pure assassin. He shot him right in the middle of the back, instantly dead. And now he's like, I'm watching, the girls are going crazy for him. This is a sickness. This is, this really has to be studied and investigated.
He then had a White House-related account posting that clip. The deputy director of the DOJ's public affairs had shared that post and added, POTUS is absolutely right. And the chief of staff to the deputy attorney general then shared that post. So that's also not where it ended, because on Monday, you had White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt referring to Mangione as a left-wing assassin. And then the next day, you had deputy chief of staff Stephen Miller saying that Thompson was brutally gunned down by another self-described so-called anti-fascist. And so with all that, you've had Mangione's lawyers arguing that the administration had indelibly prejudiced Mr. Mangione by baselessly linking him to unrelated violent events and left-wing extremist groups despite there being no connection or affiliation. And then adding, the attempts to connect Mr. Mangione with these incidents and paint him as a left-wing violent extremist are false, prejudicial, and part of a greater political narrative that has no place in any criminal case, especially one where the death penalty is at stake. And in response, you had the judge agreeing that it at least appeared that the administration had violated her earlier warning. And so with that, she ordered that the government submit a sworn declaration by the end of the week explaining how these violations occurred and what steps have been taken to ensure none occur in the future. And she also warned that any additional violations could result in sanctions, including financial penalties, contempt of court findings, or what she called relief specific to the prosecution of this matter. And actually, notably with that, she was just talking about those Justice Department officials reposting Trump. She also said she would consider Trump himself, as well as the comments made by Leavitt and Miller, when she considered a motion filed over the weekend challenging the DOJ's decision to seek the death penalty. Right, and with that, you had Mangione's lawyers arguing that the DOJ, they violated his constitutional rights and they prejudiced the case against him, including by turning that whole arrest into a spectacle with that highly choreographed perp walk that his lawyers argued was done solely to prejudice him and without the slightest legitimate law enforcement objective. And so, we're gonna have to wait to see what happens, but I mean, it's happening fresh off the heels of another legal victory for Mangione, right? Because as we talked about earlier this month, a New York State judge dismissed terrorism charges against him, though of course leaving the murder charges in place, which of course is also separate from the federal case where he's potentially facing the death penalty. But still, it's gonna be very interesting to see how all this legal wrangling plays out and what happens when we get to a trial.